Hi, this is Alex Weldon. I'm here to tell you a bad beat story for my friend Robbie Straczynski on his site, CardplayerLifestyle.com. If you're a reader of that site, you may have seen my name as he did an interview with me for his Get to Know the Poker Writer series. So yeah, I am a poker writer among other things, living in Montreal, Canada, um, and a semi-pro poker player. And the story I'm going to tell you is from this summer, uh, when I went down to Vegas for the World Series of Poker, tail end of it, to play the little one for one drop. And it's my first time at the WSOP. It was also the highest buy-in tournament I played, even though it's $1,111. So it's one of the smaller ones at the WSOP, but I'm mostly an online player, so I've played one $1,000 tournament before in Montreal, but usually I'm like playing around the $200-300 level. Um, so anyway, I'd fired two bullets. First bullet didn't go well at all. Second bullet was going really well. In fact, I was sort of halfway through the flight. I was third in chips in the chip counts, and at this point, when this happened. I don't think I was that high in the overall chip counts, but I was still definitely the chip leader at the table. And I was playing a fairly aggressive game using my chip lead to push people around. And I don't know how many listeners have been to the WSOP themselves, but one of the things I observed there compared to other live venues where I'm used to playing poker is I found a lot of the people were trying to, a lot of the semi-competent players were trying to emulate the style of recognizable pros. I mean, not the playing style, but the actual like physical appearance, right? So, this guy was one of them. He looked a lot like Chance Corneth. He's shaved head, sunglasses, and he was sitting very straight, not moving his head, and being very slow and meticulous with his chips, taking himself very seriously. So yeah, fake Chance Corneth will abbreviate that FCK, which I think is an appropriate enough abbreviation, given that I don't like the guy at all, and not just because of the bad beat. There was bad blood between us because I think maybe three orbits earlier, before this happened, there's another guy at the table who, in fairness, I mean, I think the guy probably was in fact angle shooting, but this FCK guy, was, even though he wasn't directly involved in the hand, he got really upset that this guy had been angling, which is okay, except that he was taking it out on the dealer. Like, he felt that the dealer should have done something to prevent it, and it wasn't just like right after the hand. It was like for the next two orbits, he was just laying into the dealer constantly, and the rest, myself and the rest of the table, were getting very agitated about this. Finally, and then even worse, yeah. So then after like two orbits, the dealer, there was a dealer shift change. New dealer came in, and this guy didn't even stop at that point. He starts laying into the new dealer, talking about like what a crappy dealer the other dealer is for not doing something. Anyway, so finally, at this point, I couldn't stand it. I told the guy to shut up, essentially. So I don't think he liked me very much either. So that sets the stage for this. Now, I'm in early position. I can't remember if I'm actually under the gun or under the gun +1 or whatever. But anyway, I get ace jack, which is slightly loose to open with from absolutely under the gun at a full table. But I was on a rampage. I was doing very well, and people were folding too much to me, so I think it was fine to open that. And then folds around to this fairly competent woman player that was sitting opposite me at the table. And she tanks a bit, and she's staring at me, I guess, trying to get a read. And I'd been using fake tells fairly effectively. So if someone's staring at you trying to get a read, what they're looking for usually is if you remain impassive and keep staring at the table, or look away and try to look nervous or whatever, then they're going to read you as strong. Whereas if you look them back in the eye, usually that implies weakness, because strong means weak, weak means strong. So I figure if she has to think about it, she's probably weaker than ace jack. So I want her to call. So I make eye contact, and sure enough, she calls. And FCK is right behind her. He calls, and folds around, keeps folding around until the big blind calls. Flop comes out, jack 8 deuce. two suits. So I flop top pair, top kicker. Um, and it's a pretty great flop for me besides that, because there's just not a lot of ways that other people can connect with the board. The big blind maybe, but certainly you don't expect many deuces in people's ranges. Eights, yes, but I mean, to have two pair, it would have to be Jack eight, which again, like the big blind, you can see that, but the middle position players probably not. On the other hand, there are a lot of possible flush draws and straight draws, gut shots, overcards, all sorts of things that people might be floating you with. So, so even though I've just got one pair and it's four ways, I think I'm good to bet out, which is what I did. So the woman folds, FCK calls, and big blind folds. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good because, I mean, like, what can this guy have that beats me, right? And then the turn is another deuce, which is, yeah, I mean, it's basically a blank, should be anyway. And I bet again, and he raises me. And I'm thinking about it, I'm like, how would I play a draw on this board? I think that on the flop, raising with a draw doesn't make sense, because you're, like, what are you representing there? That's really that strong. But whereas now raising the turn makes a little bit more sense, because, I mean, he probably doesn't have the odds to just call. He doesn't want to fold. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I felt like he could easily be raising with a draw there. So I think about it for a while, and I'm like, what beats me? Pair of eights. That's, the second deuce on the board and the jack in my hand make sets of jacks and deuces very unlikely. Yeah, jack eight, not really something I'd consider. Over pairs, queens through aces, he'd probably be three betting pre-flop. So yeah, I mean, I just don't see what beats me. So I call. Don't see what beats me except a pair of eights, of course, which is what I'm dreading, and at this point, I'm getting paranoid because, I was doing so well. I was like, okay, this guy has a pair of eights, but I mean, if that's the only thing that beats me and I can put him on other stuff, I've just got to, he's just got to show me those eights. And then the river is 9. So it does complete some possible straights, but I think it's much more likely that I mean, obviously, like, the open-ended straight draw is the most likely. There's also lots of flush draws he has. So I check to him. I want to induce a bluff. If he missed a flush, he could try to represent two pair or a straight here. I think if he's got like 10-9, he's not calling the third barrel anyway, but he'll check back and I'll win. I'm not really that worried about queen 10. I'm still worried about the pocket eights, but anyway. So I check to him and he thinks a long time, and then he goes all in. And at this point, my read was, I actually started feeling better because he thought so long. I was thinking that it was now pretty likely that he had 10-9, and he was, the reason he was thinking is he was trying to decide whether he had enough showdown equity to check back. And that would be a reasonable thing to be thinking about. And if that was the case, then I think the reasonable conclusion is that for me to barrel twice and then check, probably 10-9 does not have a lot of showdown equity, because I probably wouldn't be going two barrels with a stone bluff, and if I had a busted draw myself, I probably would have pulled the trigger on the third barrel. So I call. After thinking about it for a while, I call, and he happily slams down his hand on the table, and from across the table I can see the 8. And so I say, oh yeah, okay, pocket eights, you had them. And the table cracks up, and he's like, no, I have 8-2. Shows the 8 deuce offsuit that somehow he called with pre-flop, and outflopped me. It's sort of thing that's standard online. I wasn't expecting it in a tournament to that buy-in. So yeah, incredibly frustrating. This guy was a complete FCK. That was for, I don't know, I'd say probably about 6 starting stacks, so like $6,000 in equity. And And yeah, I mean, it didn't knock me out, but it put me back down to slightly less than what was an average stack at that point, and things did not go any better after that, especially because I was tilted. And probably would not have tilted me nearly as much if it was anyone except that guy. But that's always the way it is with bad beats. It's always the one person at the table that you really wish it wasn't. And that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it.